Welcome to Two Souls Podcast, a podcast to shift, impact, empower, and disrupt your consciousness, ultimately allowing you to thrive in this human experience. Now here are your hosts, Amber Megenhauser and Angela Blaha. Hey Amber, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Great. What's our topic for today?
Well, I have had some things come up lately with my memory. So I just thought it would be a good topic to talk about. Um, I feel like there's a lot of factors that play into this. I used to have a great memory, but when I went through like my big sick migraine stage, I felt like a lot of the medication I was on actually made my short term memory horrible. And lately, I've noticed it's just come to my awareness where something will come up and it's like, why do I not remember that? So I thought talking about like loss of memory, things that we can't remember, things that we feel like we should remember, like why do we not remember things sometimes when they are important to get to where we're going, or things from the past that somebody will bring up and it's like, gosh, no, I don't even remember that. Like why is that? Like why do we lose some of that memory? Is it because we don't want to remember things?
So, multi-level question. I love these kind. So, first of all, a lot of chemicals, like synthetic chemicals, um, reduce memory loss or reduce memory. So, and they create a lot of memory loss. So, there's a lot of drugs out there, that synthetic drugs that actually do this purposefully. Like one of their, warnings is memory loss. So there's that. The other thing is, sometimes when we have trauma, we either remember the trauma or we don't remember the trauma. And if we can associate the experience, if we can associate the experience during a traumatic period in our life, chances are we can't remember those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So even though
That makes a
sometimes,
lot of sense. Why?
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, even though we
It
have
does make a lot of
trauma, okay, I'm gonna pause.
I definitely get like when we have traumatic experiences and not remembering things like that. But like even really important things that I want to remember as far as things I'm doing, and it's like I have to go back to notes from a specific time and be like, "Oh yeah, that's what that was." Okay. Now I'll like click save and then I will remember it. But to remember it later, it's just like not there.
Yes. So we've talked about, when we move levels of consciousness, right? And if we don't intentionally bring all of our memory with us, and we move into that space of freedom, like we've talked about, that space where you get into pure freedom and you're just like, you don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
if we don't bring all of our memory into that space of consciousness, like it's gone. So the mind only does what it's asked to do because it holds the memory. Our cells hold the memory. But remember, when we're working through levels of consciousness, and if we're clearing or transforming or healing ourselves, sometimes we don't need those memories any longer. Sometimes there are important things that we need to remember, and in that space of freedom, especially if we're just still in that space of freedom, but we think that we're moving through that space, and but the memory will be the clue that we're not completely out of that space yet. So taking notes or writing yourself little post-it notes of so that we don't forget things is not uncommon for that kind of a space. For that space where it's just too free, that what happens is the mind has to recalculate itself. It has to take all the zeros that we've put into there, or the ones. Let's say the ones are memories, like we're a computer bank, right? And so let's say the ones are memories and zeros are things to be imprinted with a memory. So all of those ones have to move forward into the next space of consciousness. Now, if they don't move forward, what happens is those ones turn back into zeros, and you open yourself up for new imprinting, for new experiences, for new memory.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So how do I how do I get my memory back? Because I feel like I need there's things that I want to remember, but they're just like not there. And unless I go back through things, I could sit and I'm like, I'll just start writing. I need to remember this stuff. And then I'll just kind of write and let it come in, but I feel like it's not exactly what I needed to remember, if that makes sense.
Well, so in this point, you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of having to remember anyway? When if you're really a conscious being, you can just pull information anytime you want it. Like there's no use for memory at a certain point of consciousness. You just become a stream of information. So those old belief systems that we've carried around, that we have to memorize things, that's a programming from education, right? Like you have to memorize these dates and these events and this blah blah blah. And you train yourself to remember. Before that, when you were a child, like there was no memory, it was just experience. So if you're working hard on, becoming that experiential, very numinous channeling kind of a being where you just pull whatever information you need anytime you need it, the memory doesn't actually have to be there. You can just stream everything that you want.
That makes so much sense. I'm like, yeah, why am I racking my brain that I don't remember? Because that is kind of what I do, where I'm like, okay, no, this is what I need to know. Like, bring it in, and then I
Hmm.
will. So maybe that's why, and I'm just like limiting myself because I feel like I need to have a memory of it.
Right. Now, when there's something important that happens and you're like, oh gosh, I have to remember this later, what I do is I just write it down. If there's something so important that I have to remember it later, I'll put it in my calendar. Otherwise, I'm just a
Yeah,
constant stream of information. Like I don't have a need any longer to remember something. Now there are some things like, childhood events or something that, pop up every now and then, but I can't say that I have a whole lot of memory, like we used to think of memory, or how we believe memory should be. Like we should be able to remember every moment of our lives, our entire lives. That's craziness to me. I don't need to have
yeah.
any memories unless I need to heal something. Like that's my whole outlook, that's my whole intention. Otherwise, like what's the purpose of remembering something? It's in the past. That's what stops you from
Yeah.
patterns. That's how you can change patterns very quickly, and you can move out of those loops that we've been in, those regurgitating kind of loops of thought or emotion, right? We just don't have to hold the memory of them any longer. And our cells do it naturally. Like our cells change every 7 years at a minimum. Some cells are changing every 24 days, right? So in order, and that's, the body just naturally evolutionizes. But the memory, the mind, the things that we've been trained to think are important, like we don't evolutionize those things. And that's where we get caught up in thinking that we have to remember. unimportant things.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Though, I mean, and I definitely get like all of that and why that is happening. But it drives me crazy that like even simple things like my daughter will say something to me like, "Oh, don't forget I have this and this and this." And she'll be like 3 days later, "Oh no, remember I told you?" And I like don't even remember the conversation at all. And I'm like, so it's like I feel like my memory is just driving me crazy right now. Like, why do I not remember nothing? Unless I write it down, I don't remember it.
So that's not a memory thing, that's an attention thing. Like when we're not fully invested in the conversation in the moment, the mind won't remember it whether you think you have memory or whether you think you're losing your memory. It doesn't matter. It's an attention. When we are tuned in to listening and really paying attention to what's going on in our lives, then we'll remember it no matter what, right? It's the intention behind it. If I'm
Yeah.
intending to remember something, I'll remember it. But if you're busy, and you're running around and everybody's in chaos, and then, the kids drop this bomb or your partner drops a, hey, I got to do this, you're not going to remember it no matter what. It's an attention. We're not we're not fully listening.
And I just want to relate it to my memory because of the issues I had, which makes a lot of sense. Because for about
Right.
3 years, like I couldn't remember anything, like almost anything from my life, like going backwards. Like it's like nothing was there. But I think it was some traumatic events that happened. And I just was like, wasn't there between the pills I was taking to supposedly get better. It was like getting worse. And that's exactly what it is. I just want to relate it to that instead of
Yeah,
realizing
well,
that I don't necessarily need the memory.
right. And apparently taking those pills in that time in your life was trauma. And now the only thing that the mind has to um, relate it to is that. And so you want to blame it on what the heck's wrong with me, right? When in actuality, it's you're
Yeah.
evolutionizing, you're growing, you're expanding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I
So
never
does that
looked
make you
at it
feel
like
better,
that
or
at
does it make
all.
you, yeah? Does it make you feel better, or does it make you worry
Yeah.
more?
No, it definitely makes me feel better. It's almost like it's a relief because I was kind of beating myself up about this. And I'm just like, my memory is really starting to get on my nerves. Like, why can I not remember this? Like,
Hmm.
whether like I said, whether it's an old memory from childhood or simple as my daughter telling me to remember something, it was just driving me crazy. And it felt like everything kept, like, I just couldn't remember nothing. But some things are like so vivid too, where I'm like, if I click save on something, it's forever there.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a retraining of your mind to remember what's important and to be fully listening, right? Because when you become freer in your energy, like there's a lot of space there. And it's like that's what bothers people about freedom is there we have so much space within our field, right? Within our memory, within our
Yeah.
thinking, within our emotions. Like there's just this freedom and we don't really know how to handle it. And there's too much sometimes. There's too much freedom. There's too much space. And so you literally have to just retrain yourself to save what is really important, um, you know, and then let go of the rest and not really hold that within your energy field because that's the point of evolution is to become free, right? Like that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And when you
Yep.
when we don't have to hold all of that information there anymore, like it's like, well, now what do I do? That's what scares people so much about evolution, is the freedom of it. What do we do with it? I'm losing my memory.
Yeah.
No, you're not losing your memory. You're just maybe not super engaged when they're telling you, and then you're not clicking save, within your own mind that says, oh, I got to remember this. It's a
Yeah.
programming that needs to happen that when we move into that freedom space, like it's a reprogramming that has to happen.
Okay. That makes so much sense. I'm sitting here like, why did I never look at it like that before? But
Well, because we're
you're
not
right. I
trained
just
in
wanted to
freedom.
relate it to the past.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what we
I
do,
really
right?
struggle.
That's
Yeah.
what,
When
yeah.
you get to that freedom space, it is definitely it's an experience to go through when it first kind of starts, because I just almost felt like I had no emotions. I
Hmm.
just like was like living life, loved life, and like it definitely is an experience to go through that freedom. So that
Yeah.
makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's a scary place to be because we don't have memory of being free. This experience, this third dimensional experience, has always been a slavery consciousness because it's built on manipulation and control. And when we break free from that, it's super hard to like understand it because we don't have any memory of it.
Yeah.
And it's really scary for a lot of people. I mean, I was in that space for a really long time, probably a couple years trying to figure out what the heck is this? Like, right? And I kept trying to figure out what was wrong with me, but
Yeah.
that wasn't really the problem. The problem was me saying, okay, I'm the one that's in control of who I am. And I get to think and I get to remember and I get to feel exactly what I want to feel. Like that's what creates paranoia, I want to say, when we get to this space of pure freedom. We don't know how to handle it, and we don't know, and we're not conditioned to be the one in power of who we are. We have so many belief systems and so many enslavery codes within us that we're so programmed, right? We're just so programmed to be zombies, to be walking dead. And when we break free from that and we become very conscious about who we are and what we are, and we release from all the past, it's like, well, now what do I do? What, wait, I'm the one that gets to decide what I think? That's a scary thought for many. I mean, I was there. I was like, wait, I get to decide what I get to feel? I'm the one that gets to create what I want to create. Well, what do I want to create? Right. And then that whole what do I desire thing comes in, and it's like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what I want.
It is. It's and the people around you too, when you go through that, like I remember when I very first got to that point, I people would get so mad at me because I had no emotion about anything at all. Like none. I just was like, well, sorry you feel that way. This is how I feel, and kind of don't care, And people do. They're like, well, you should feel this way or you should feel that way. And you realize like how much we are controlled to think and feel and do what everyone else wants us to do. So it almost is so freeing that for a while it is kind of scary because you're just like,
Hmm.
okay, like is this right or is this wrong? But it's not really right or wrong for anybody. It's about what you feel is right or wrong. So that makes so much sense.
Well, and I
I
want to bring
never
up,
looked at it like
yeah,
that.
yeah, I want to
Go
bring up
ahead.
the point that, when we get to that space and we release from the emotions how we're supposed to feel, there's a deep sense of passion that arrives. And you could care less about the rest of the stuff, but that deep passion becomes super focused. And when we can align with that, like that's when you're on purpose. That's when everything comes together. That's when you become wealthy in all areas of your life. That's when you become the creator, the master of who you are. And that's what you want to share. But it takes, for some, like for me, it took several years for me to get there. Now I know people who can transform it in like, nothing, like nothing ever happened. Men are really good at transforming and moving in through these spaces because they don't hold that emotional charge like a lot of women do. And so for them, that whole process is quicker, I want to say. But, it depends on how much we hold on to from our past, as particularly females, um, or women, that we're trained to hold on to that kind of stuff, right? We're trained to sort of like feel the charge of it, I want to say. But when you get through that and you're emotionless almost, well, there is a space of emotionless where you're like, yeah, I don't care about any of those things any longer. Then that passion begins to, it gets sparked. That's an awakening all within itself. And then all of a sudden it takes over and it drives you. It's what creates the ambition behind your purpose. Like you become very aligned, and it's real simple, real easy. But working through that whole process is what gets that's what trips people up. And we can get stuck in that process again because, as women, we like to process everything through our emotions and all that kind of stuff. But if we would just actually
Yeah.
release from it all or clear it all, it would be very, very quick and easy and simple.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
went through I still feel like I'm maybe a little bit still kind of going through that because you do deal with so many different emotions that you're emotionally attached to everything, and you just slowly release things one by one. And you're right, when you do get to that point of like pure freedom, you almost don't know what to do with it. Like
Hmm.
I kind of went through a phase where I was just like, it is what it is, and this is what I'm going to do, and I don't really care what anyone else thinks. And people do kind of get mad at you, and it's just like, no, like doing what makes me happy. That's all that matters today. And you kind of go through that. I don't really know how to it's like a freedom period. And then yeah, you're right. Then you just kind of shift into something else, and everything in your whole world changes. The
Hmm.
things I used to
You
have
know,
passion about, I thought I had passion about, don't even matter anymore. And now I live a completely different life.
yeah. I think that that's what we fear the most. When we get into that space and we can feel or sense it coming, right? That space of I don't care about any of these things that I'm supposed to care about. Like I don't care that my house is clean. I don't care that that I whatever it is, like I don't care about those kinds of minutia anymore. What I do care about and am super passionate about is helping people work through their transformation. Now that I can get all riled up about in a heartbeat. But when we get into that space of I don't care, we sort of get stuck there because we think that we're leaving people behind. This is where the mentality of I don't want to go there because because I'm going to people won't like me anymore and maybe I won't like myself and I'm going to lose people in my life and all of those we don't have to leave people behind at all. And honestly, if they're not there to support you through transformation, they shouldn't be in your life. Like, why would you want that anyway?
Yes.
So, those people that come with you, they're going to be the ones who are going to be there to support you, to be there for, if you fall or if you climb the mountain, it doesn't even matter. They're just going to be there to support you. those are the ones that you really want in your life anyway. Everything else needs to fall away. Because when we move through transitions, when we evolutionize ourselves, when we move into different streams of conscious awareness, then, if people really love you, they're going to stick by your side no matter what. But we have a lot of
Yes.
fear to transform ourselves because we think we're leaving people behind, or we think that we have to separate from them in order to move forward. That's not; those are all just lies.
I think that as you change, though, it's you realize what you do and don't want in your life. And I think
Hmm.
that's what is hard for people, like, to accept, where they feel like they need to leave people behind because they want to be somebody so much more. And if other people aren't willing to also want that for themselves, you do in a way feel like you leave them behind because you're just like, no, I can't go back to that place. Like, this is who I am now.
Right. Well, people are afraid of change. Period. Like we don't like to change as a
For
human
sure.
race. Man, we just want to stay, you know, burning fires and hunting and doing nothing else. That's really, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really who we, as a human race, we just want it, we don't want to be motivated. We don't want to change. We don't want to grow and expand. And what's come into my awareness recently is that there's a lot of souls out there that have that same kind of energy. They don't really want to change. They just want to stay here, hang out. That's why we have so many reincarnations happening. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. But yeah, that's it's part of why we're still hanging out here, not evolving over gazillions of years. Like we don't have that drive to evolutionize ourselves. We just want to come here and hang out and have a life and see what happens. There's no
And it's boring on
responsibility.
that level.
Well, when you get to different level of conscious awareness about who you are, it does become very boring. This experience
Yeah.
does become very boring, yeah. And you're like, yeah, okay, it's time to go. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
We're not hanging out here anymore. All right, so does that
Yeah.
help your memory problem?
Yes,
Which
that
isn't really a
that makes
problem.
so yeah, it's not really a problem.
No.
That makes so much sense though. I needed to have you say that to look at it differently because I was just trying to relate it to my own past experience, which has really nothing to do why the memory's not there.
Hmm. Right.
So
Super.
I just remember what I need to. Awesome. Well, thank you
Exactly.
so much for that. I really appreciate it.
No
And I hope
problem.
that helps somebody else out there too. We love to talk about different things. If you have a question, please feel free to reach out to one of us. We would love to help with all areas. We probably have went through it, so no question is a dumb question. Please feel free to ask us. Until next time, from our soul to yours, have a super fantastic day.